Womp is a browser-based 3D application that is very beginner-friendly and fun to play with. The first thing you'll notice is that everything looks goopy and blobby, which is what's so fun about it. It has an SDF workflow, or signed distance field, which is like metaballs in Blender if you're familiar with that. What this means is that you can control how shapes merge into each other based on how close they are, which makes it easy to make very organic shapes, but as you'll see, still allows us to make clean, hard surface type designs too. Just to be transparent, I am being paid to make this video, but as always, my opinions are my own, and I wouldn't be making a video about Womp if I didn't believe in it. So if you type in womp3d.com, it will take you to this website right here, where you'll be greeted with this big page that shows off their workflow. At the time of recording, Womp is still in alpha, so if you want to try it out yourself, you can use the code in the description to get access. So if you scroll down, we have this video again showing off their workflow. And if you scroll down even more, we have some examples of things that were made with Womp, and we'll take a look at some public projects later. They also have links to their social media down here if that's something you want to check out. So Womp is going to have a competition soon called Wompathon that is for everyone ages 12 and up, and that will be going on from July 22nd to the 24th. So there will be prizes for the top 3 winners. First place gets a MacBook Air, second gets an iPad Air, and third gets this 3D printer right here. They have 2 themes to help people get started: robots of the future and a brilliant invention. This is one reason why I'll be making a robot in this video. More information about the Wompathon is on this site. Again, you can click the link below, and the FAQ at the bottom should be able to answer any questions that you have. So let's take a look at the platform now. It's worth mentioning that Womp only works in Chrome right now, but it's still in development, so that could change in the future. So on the left right here, this is where you can start a new file, and then below that we have the Discover section with all of these tags. You scroll all the way to the bottom, that's where you'll find your projects that are saved. And in the center, this is where we have all of the community creations. So there are actually a lot of things to check out over here. So let's just click on this one in the corner. And when this loads up, you'll be able to inspect it in 3D space, check it out. And another nice feature is that if you want to actually, take this apart and look at it, there's this copy and edit button right here. So let's click on that. And this will load it up in the platform so that you can actually take a look at all of the individual pieces over here. You can, take it apart. So this is going to be really useful for learning, because dissecting other people's projects is a great way to learn, because you can see how other people are making things. And let's check out a second project. So I want to check out this teapot right here. So like I said before, Womp is browser based, so you don't have to download anything to use it. And it's all cloud computed too, which means you don't need a fast computer or a nice graphics card to use it. All the heavy work is being done on their end, which is nice because it's rendered using path tracing to calculate light bounces and reflections. Path tracing looks really good, but not all computers can handle it, so it's nice that they take care of that. I know a thing they're working on is adding real-time collaboration, so you can work with other people on the same projects at the same time. Kind of like how Figma does it, if you're familiar with that. Alright, let's create a new file now. So you can just go over to the left, click this new file button right here. It's important to remember that Womp is still being developed, so they're constantly fixing bugs, changing things, and adding new features. So this is the default scene. First thing we should talk about is how to move around. So you can left click and drag, and this is going to orbit the camera. You can also right click and drag, and this is going to pan back and forth like that. And you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. We also have these options up here if you want to just snap to the front, things like that. And if you drift off to the side, you can select an object and hit center view, and that will put it in the center of the screen. And we also have an option to switch between perspective and orthographic. So if you're in orthographic, you can look from the front without perspective, and it just looks like straight on. Now, as you saw, we can select objects. We can do that by just left clicking on them. And if you want to move them around, we have these options on the right over here. We have position, rotation, and size. You can just type in values that you want if you know what you want, or you can scroll through them. To do that, you just hover over the letter, click and drag. And if you want to undo, you can just hit Control-Z. You can also move things around by selecting them, and then we have these arrows right here. You can click and drag on those to move them back and forth. Also, if you hover in the middle, we have these other options. That's basically moving things along 2 axes instead of 1. If you want to rotate things, you just go to any corner and you can see we have arrows right here. So if you click and drag on those and you're outside of the circle, it will just display the amount of degrees. If you're on the inside of the circle, it will snap to these increments right here, which is pretty handy. Now let's select the cube for this part. You can scale things up and down the whole thing by hovering over the white square in the middle and clicking and dragging like that, and that will scale the whole thing up and down. You can also hover over any of the edges, and you can see we have these icons right here. And when you hover over those, it will let you select a face, and then if you click and drag, it will extend that face. So this is more useful for things like cubes and cylinders. If you do that with a sphere, it will scale uniformly like that. Now, I'm sure you've noticed something weird going on with the cube right here, how there's an object cutting into it. That's because we actually have a third shape in here, and we can select it over on the left by just clicking on this one right here. And now that we have this selected, you can see more clearly that this is cutting into our cube. That's because this is a negative shape. So on the right over here, you can see under behavior, we have 2 options, positive and negative. Negative is going to cut into other shapes as long as they are above it over here in the outliner. And we can turn this to positive, and now we can actually see that other sphere. If we drag it over here for a second, this is a good opportunity to explain Goop strength. So over on the right, we have Goop strength right here. And when we turn it up, you can see that these objects start kind of fusing together. Goop strength, when you turn it up, they'll be able to connect from, further apart. So now it's not connected, but if I turn Goop strength up, it will eventually connect. And a nice thing about the way these connect to is it's going to blend the materials, which just looks pretty nice. Now let's check out the interface. So on the left over here, we have the list of our objects, and you can see when we hover over, we have some different options. Also, when you hover over it, if you look over here, you can see that it's outlining the object that you're hovering over, which is nice if you're trying to find objects. You can also click on them to select them like that. And then we have this button on the side. When you click that, we have these options in here for copy, paste, duplicate, things like that. You can also click and drag to move them around if you want to reorder them. Now up at the top, we have our scene name, so you can click on that to change it. I'm just going to change this to say Goobot for now because that's what we're going to be making later. Now next to that, we have objects. So this is where you can bring in new objects. All you have to do is click on them and it will put a new one in the center of the scene like that. And you can delete them by just having them selected and hitting backspace. Also, if you have an object selected in your scene and you go over here, you'll see we have these extra little icons, and if you click on that, it will swap it out with, the object that you select. Down here, we also have a way to add in community projects, which is a pretty neat thing to see. Next, we have global scene lighting, so you can add in different lamps and things like that to light your scene. And below, we have different images for global lighting. So if you change this, it's going to change the overall lighting and also change the way the reflections look and things like that. Next, we have backdrop. This is just going to change the background of the color. This will also change some of the reflected color in here. Next, we have materials. So this is where you can see all of the materials that you've made. And again, we have materials from the community if you want to use somebody else's. Another way of changing the materials is over in the outliner over here. You can just click on these little colored balls, and that's another way to open up this panel. Last, we have functions where you can duplicate, union, and subtract. We'll talk more about union and subtract later. Now that we've explained all that, let's come over here and delete this and get started with our robot. So to get started with the body, I want to add in a cylinder. So we can click this button up here, add in a cylinder like that. And I'm going to change the backdrop so that it's just a little higher contrast. So actually a way to change the backdrop too is when you have nothing selected, you have lights and environment over here, and we can just kind of change to whatever color we want. I'm going to change this to a purple color and just give it a little color like that. I'm just going to drag this up and expand the radius a little, and this will be for the body of our robot. Now we can also copy and paste to duplicate objects. I mean, if you come over here and click on this button right there, you can see we have copy, paste, duplicate, rename. We have some options here. So we can actually just use Control C and Control V, and that will duplicate this. Now I'm gonna rotate this around, so let's just rotate like this, and I'll keep it on the inside so we can snap it to 90 degrees like that. Now I'm going to turn the radius down like this and turn the height up. So this is going to be for like our arms basically. And we can mess with like the roundness and the goop strength. So the roundness is going to affect like the edges. You can see as I'm rounding it, they're kind of like smoothing off. If you turn this up all the way, it will become kind of like capsule shaped like that. So I want to keep this pretty low. I'll just set it to something like 5. I like to have a slight rounded edge just so it catches the light a little better. I'll do that for this one also. And for goop strength, that is going to control like how much it's curving right here. So again, we can just kind of click and drag right here to make it slide. If we turn this down all the way, it will be like completely sharp where they intersect right there. So I don't usually like to have it set at 0, especially for this shape. I kind of like when it's a little more smooth like that. So let's like change some of these colors a little. I'll just click on this. And one way to start changing colors is down here on the right. We have material options right here. You can see it says unsaved material. So let's just change the color of this. I'm gonna make our robot mostly orange with maybe some like purple details. So let's make this orange right here. This one's gonna be like a lighter orange color. So I think that is pretty good. Now we can save this material with this save material button, and I'll just name it orange. Something like that, and you can hit save. So now we can reuse this on our other objects. So I'll click this object right here, go up to, the material option, and we have recently used at the top. We can use this to kind of like have our list of materials. So I'll use this, but I actually want this to be a different color. So I will hit duplicate and apply right here. And now we have a copy. I'll just call this dark orange. So let's just drag this down over here and we'll have something a little darker. All right, let's duplicate this right here. So you can select it, Control C, Control V, like that. I'll change the radius down a little. We're just gonna create like an extra little shape at the top and the bottom right here. And I think maybe we should turn the goop strength down. I'll turn it down to something like 5, so it's a little sharper like that. And I also want to change the material to be dark like that. So I'll just pull it up a little. So I want to kind of like hollow this out a little so we can add a negative object, but I want it to be pretty close to the same size and shape. So I'll just copy paste this, Control C, Control V, and with that selected, we can turn the radius down right here, and I'll make this a negative shape. So if this doesn't work, that's because the way negative shapes have to be below other objects. So you can just click and drag it down like that. And you just want to make sure that the things they're cutting into are above them. That's the way they work. It'll actually tell you that if you hover over it, it says negative. This negative object cuts into objects above it. And we can drag the bottom up a little too, so it's not going in too deep. So let's do some more fun stuff with negative shapes. I'll just select this one that we just used and duplicate that, Control C, Control V. And I'm gonna rotate this 90 degrees just by typing it in right here, 90. Now it's on its side like that. I'll turn the radius down and I'll turn the height up so it's kind of cutting through. I think this is a little too low, so I'll pull it up. And I want there to be these like cuts kind of going all the way around. So I'm gonna duplicate this a few times with Control C, Control V, go to the corner, rotate this. I'll rotate it 45 degrees, and I'll just keep doing this a few times until we go all the way around. There we go. And now we have this cool shape right here. So I wanna make the top of this look kind of goopy like a lava lamp. So to do that, I am actually going to select this cylinder right here. I'm going to duplicate that, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to make this positive. So now I want this to be below everything, so it's not being cut into. And I'm going to make this a different material. So let's go down over here, duplicate and apply, and I'm going to turn the metalness up most of the way. And I want this to be kind of like a pale purple, something like this, maybe. And I'll just drag it down a little. So I don't want this to morph too much into the environment around it. And if we turn the Goop strength up, you can see that that's exactly what it's going to do. So I guess now is a good time to talk more about unions. I like to use these kind of like their groups. So right now we have the cylinder that we don't want to be connected, and then everything else. So let's select everything else. It's going to be basically the body of our robot. So let's go to the outliner over here and select this bottom shape right here, and then shift select the top one. This is going to select everything except for our cylinder, and we can click union like that. So as soon as we do that, you can see that this disconnects over here. It's not really connecting to it anymore. And we have everything kind of cleared up over here. It's just called Union 1. And we can look inside of it by clicking this arrow right there. So union is a way of kind of grouping a bunch of things together. If you know about Boolean stuff, this is going to like make everything connected. But because all of this is already connected, we just kind of have a tidy group. So subtract is a similar thing, and they have a little description of what it does down here. It says this function lets you subtract chunks from the first object in the selection. So it would basically make this first cylinder be positive and then everything below it be negative. So another thing we can do is hide entire unions with this eye right here. So we can click that, and now we're only looking at this cylinder. So I am going to add in a sphere, and it ended up down here. So let's drag it up, and I'm going to scale it down like that. Let's move it around over here. And I'm going to change the material, so we can change it over here. Now we can duplicate this around a bunch of times to kind of get this looking a little more blobby like a lava lamp. So Control C, Control V, move some of this around, change the scale and, move it around and stuff. And I'll add one that's a little higher in the middle like that. But I want this to look more connected, so you can either change the Goop strength, just turn it up until it starts connecting, but then it's going to connect to all that stuff. So what I'll do instead, just Control Z to go back. So what I'll do instead is just duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to turn this over into a cylinder. So we can just hit the swap button right here. Now we have this cylinder. I'm just going to drag this into the middle. I'm going to turn the radius down quite a bit like that so it's skinny, and then I'll turn the height up. And we can kind of use this to connect the two objects like that. And it's making this like cool kind of like bridging goopy thing. And I think that looks awesome. So I'll just duplicate a few more of these around and maybe make them a little smaller. Play with the Goop strength if you want it to, look a little different. And if we want, we can change some of the colors of these too. So I'll select this one and maybe just duplicate this color, and I'll make this a little more vibrant like that. We can, add that to other things, but I'd like a different color too. So let's duplicate this again, and I'll make this like more orange like that. So we have some nice contrast now. So we can just go over here, click on things and apply different materials that we have over here. So I'll make that one purple, this one we can make orange. We'll just go around and add these together. So I think that's good for now, but if you want, feel free to add more. And now let's add all of these together too into a single union. So I'm just going to, again, click on the first one, shift click on the last one, and then we'll add a union right here. And we can bring back this first one. All right, let's make the face now. So the face, I'm just gonna start off with a sphere. You can add in a sphere right here. I'll drag it out a little and pull it up until it's like close to the center. And I want to add the light purple metal material. So let's go over here. We have purple metal. Let's look from the front. And I'll just select this and scale it down. Now I'm going to hit Control C, Control V, and we're just going to copy this. And this is going to be for our eye. So I want to make this a little darker. We can come over here and let's just duplicate this. I'm going to turn the metalness all the way down and the roughness up a little more, so it's a little more matte, less reflective, and I want this to be quite a bit darker, just so we have something a little higher contrast. Now let's maybe turn the goop level down. I'll just set this one to like 5, and I'll set this one to 5 also for now. Now let's line this up for like where we want one of our eyes to be. Turn the size down. If you want this to be sharper, all you have to do is turn the goop strength down like that. So let's talk about mirroring now, because I want to mirror this eye. So right now, mirroring is in development. So at the time of recording, there are no options for it. There's just a keyboard shortcut, which is Control, Shift, and M. And now you can see it's mirrored to the other side, which, you know, is going to help us out a lot. By the time this comes out, this feature might exist in here, but for now, we just have to use this keyboard shortcut. Now I'm going to duplicate this, Control C, Control V. You can see this will also duplicate that mirroring effect, which is cool. Now I want to swap this out for a cube, so click on this little swap button right there, and I'll just make these kind of like angry eyebrows. So grab these, move them where you want. You can also change the size over here, so yeah, the X like that. I'll rotate this a little so it's conforming to the head a little better, and I'll rotate it down like that. Now for the mouth, I'm going to use a cylinder, so I'm just going to duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and we're going to go up here and swap it with a cylinder. Now I am just going to drag it from the top to make it quite a bit thinner. And we also want to change the material to that dark color right here. Now I want the gloop strength down pretty low. I'll set that to like 3. There we go. Now this is what we have. I think the height needs to be turned up a little. And I want the roundness. I'm just going to turn it up all the way so that it's completely round. I think it would be nice maybe to be a little smaller. If it's a little smaller, you know, it won't stick out at the edges, so we'll just change the radius down a little bit until it's, you know, as far as we want, basically. Now we're going to give this guy kind of like an evil smile. Now again, let's put all these into a union, so I'm just going to select all of them, go to union right there, and we can start renaming these. So we have the body, double click to name it. This is called Goop. And I'll name this one head, like that. So I do want to add a few things to the body now. I want a little cylinder that's kind of jutting out of the front. So let's just come in here, duplicate this first cylinder with Control C, Control V. I'm going to rotate it around 90 degrees, like that. And I'll turn the radius down like that, pull it to the front as far as we think it should go. So I think the head maybe should be inside of it a little. Let's change the color of this to be darker. Right there. And I'll copy and paste that and make it negative, so we're cutting it out of that shape. I'm basically just going to play with the radius until I think these look like good sizes. Another cool thing about unions is when you have them all selected, you can scale them up and down at the same time. So if you want to make the head a little bigger or smaller, you can do that. Just select the whole union. So next, let's work on the legs. So first, I want to bring in a sphere. I'll just duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and we'll swap it out over here. Click this little button. So we have an orange sphere now. Just drag it down, and I'll change the size over here until it's a little smaller. And I don't want this to be part of the body, so I'm actually just going to drag this all the way to the bottom right there, and I'll just collapse this. So I think we might need to lift everything up, so I'm just going to shift, select everything, and lift it up so we have some room for the legs. And to start the legs, I'm just going to use a cylinder. So let's just duplicate this like that. And I'll move it to the side, and we'll swap it out with a cylinder right here. And I just want to change the radius to make it a little skinnier. And we can make it shorter too. So I think this looks pretty good, but I want to change the color of this. So I'll come over here, we'll duplicate it, and I want it to be orange, but I want it to be a little like lighter and more pale. So just drag it over here a little. So I'm just gonna look from the side like this, and I'll rotate it a little, copy, paste, and then we'll rotate another one like this, and we'll just drag it down like that. Again, let's duplicate this, and we'll swap it out with a sphere like that. Now let's change this to be our regular orange color, which is this one right here. And I want it to be a little bigger, so scale it up and just put it where the knee is. So I don't want these to be like fusing into each other, so I'm just going to turn the Goop strength all the way down for this one, so it kind of just looks like it's holding these two sticks together. And if you want these to be any like shorter or longer, you can just grab the bottom and like pull it in like that. So again, I will duplicate this bottom one, Control C, Control V, and I want this to be rotated like a full 90 degrees, so I'll just type in 90, and I'll turn the Goop strength all the way down for this one, and I want to turn the roundness all the way up so it's kind of capsule shaped. Now this is going to be the foot, so I'll just put it a little lower where I want the foot to be, and we'll turn the radius up, and I want it to be a little longer. There we go. I want this to be orange also, so let's change it over here like that. And I want the bottom of the foot to be flat, so we can just duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and I will swap this out over here with a cube like that. So we can turn the roundness down, and I'll make this negative like that. And I just want to bring this down so we can make like the bottom of the foot flat like that. Let's mirror everything in here. So again, to mirror, you just want to select your object and hit Control-Shift-M like that, and it will mirror to the other side. So we have to do this to each of our objects, and also we want to do this before we turn it into a union. Select this, Control-Shift-M, and for the last two objects. So we have everything mirrored. Now let's select all of this in here, and I just want to rotate it to the side a little so it's not straightforward. So we'll just take this, rotate it a little. Don't worry about being too precise. Select the legs and move them up like that. And we can look from the side to make sure that this actually looks good. Maybe I'll pull it forward a little like that. So let's select all of these loose parts in here that we are using for our legs. So left click and shift to select all of those and turn that into a union like that. And we can rename this legs. All right, so let's make a little platform for this guy to stand on now. So I'll just add in a cube like that, and I'll drag the top down like this, and we'll just try to line it up with the bottom of the feet. And another thing is, if you want the feet to be a little more rounded on the edge, you can just select the cube that we're using to cut into the foot, and you can turn the Goop strength up a little like that, and you can see as I'm doing that, it's kind of rounding the bottom off. Scale this whole thing up a little bigger. I'll just type in 150 like that, and I want it to be rounder. And I want this to be a different color, so let's select it and check out the materials we have already going on. Let's try this this purple one right here. I'm gonna duplicate this, Control C, Control V, go back over here and maybe make this quite a bit bigger, 250 and 250, and then we can drag it down. I'm gonna select everything and just drag it up. So next I'm gonna make the arms, and these I want to look kind of like bendy pipes. So we're gonna do something a little more complex for this one. We're gonna add in a cylinder right here, and we'll pull it to the side. Now I wanna rotate this 90 degrees, so I'll just type in 90 on the Z like that. And if you haven't noticed, the axes are a little different than in Blender, so the Z and the Y will be swapped. So this is what we're going to use for like the outside of the tube. Let's turn the height down a little like that. Now I'm going to copy and paste this, Control C, Control V, and I'll make it negative. And I just need to turn the radius down a little bit like that. So you can see now that it's cutting into it, okay? So this is how you can determine like how thick it's gonna be. And I want to make this more like a round tube, so we can select the outside one and turn the roundness all the way up like that. And if we turn the goop strength all the way down, you can see that the inside is pretty sharp, but as we turn the goop strength up, you can see it will just kind of turn into this like donut shape. So you can really dial in how big you want it. I just want to make this quite a bit smaller, and you can just keep turning the goop strength up like that. Now I want to cut this so that we only have like this top corner in here. First, let's actually make all of these like different colors. So a shortcut is you can come over here to the outliner and click on these little colored balls over here. You can click on it and just add in whatever you want. I'll use this one. It's kind of like our lighter orange color. And we can set that for the negative and for the positive shape. Okay, so now I'll select the outside one and I'll copy and paste it. So we have a second one in there. And I'll replace it with a cube. So I'll turn the roundness all the way down and we'll bring it up right here. So this is being cut into right now. I want this to cut into everything else. So I'll make this negative right here. And as we pull this to the side, you can see it's starting to reveal some other shapes. So let's try dragging this down below the cylinder. And that looks like it's doing what I want now. And I'll just copy paste that again. And we can do the same thing for the side over here like that. So now we have a quarter of this. And we can do the same thing that we did for the legs where we mirrored all of them. So I'm just gonna run through now and, you know, select it, hit Control-Shift-M like that, and it will mirror to the other side. We just have to do this for all of the objects in here. So Control-Shift-M and the last one. Now it's completely mirrored. I'm just gonna select all of these pieces right here and I'm just gonna move them over here so that they're like connecting to the spot that I want. So let's make a union out of all of these so we can select all of them. And actually this is a good time to use the subtract. So we can just hit subtract because we only have one positive shape and then everything below it is negative. That's what the subtract does. So we can rename this arms. And I think another thing that I'd like to do is select this one right here. That's part of our body. I'm gonna duplicate that, Control-C, Control-V. And I want to drag it to the side right here to kind of create like almost like a cuff, something like that. I'll turn the goop strength down quite a bit so it's a little sharper, 3 or something like that. And I'll just turn the radius up. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Let's just mirror it to the other side. So select it, Control-Shift-M. All right. For the hands, I want like a half sphere. So we'll just bring a sphere in here, drag it over to the side like this, Control-C, Control-V like that, and we'll swap it with a cube and make it negative, and then drag this up so that we're like revealing the other half like that. And we can mess with the goop strength to make it a little sharper. I'll maybe set this to like 5 or something like that. Now I just want to mirror both of these. So again, Control-Shift-M, make sure that we're actually selecting both like that. So with both of them selected, you can just scale it from the middle like that. And both of these I want to make a different color. I want these to be more orange, or I'll make them dark orange. It's basically just like a very saturated brown at this point. Again, let's do that for the positive and negative shape. And I want to add some like claws, so we'll do a similar thing we did with like the legs over here. I'll just duplicate this because it's already in the right spot and I want it to be mirrored also. Control-C, Control-V, and we'll turn this into a cylinder. I'll just bring it down over here. I want to change the color too, so we can change the color over here to just orange like that. Let's make it a little skinnier. And I'll turn the goop strength down. And I want this to look more like a capsule, so I'll turn this up. I'm pretty much doing the same thing that I did for the legs. So, you know, make this a little smaller, rotate it, Control-C, Control-V. We can just spin this around like that and put it at the end. or you can shift select both of them and rotate them both at the same time like that. So I'm just going to select both of them and move them into place now. And we can Control C, Control V with both of them selected, and I'll just spin this around. I'll rotate it 180 degrees and slide it to the other side. All right, and I think that's pretty much it for our character. If we want, we can put some of these into a union. So I'll just select all of the hand parts and hit union and name that hands. So lights, if you just have like nothing selected, you can just click on the back. We have this, lights and environment section. So again, you can change the backdrop if you like. You can change the exposure of like the global lighting. And then you can see right here, we have some lights too. So if you click on them, you'll be able to adjust them, adjust where they are. I think the default lighting is pretty good, but if you want, you can change the color of the light right here to whatever you want. And you can also change the brightness like that if you wanted it to be like very red or something like that. But I'm just going to hit Control Z to bring these back to like the default settings. So if you want to render this out as like an image, you can do that. There's this button up in the top right. It's like a square with an arrow. You click on that and you can see we have this render image option. So if you wanted, you could click this so that the background is completely transparent, which is nice. So if you want to make sure that things are centered, usually what I do is just click an object that's in the center and hit center view. And then I'll just move this like up and down like that. And basically, when you hit render, it's going to render out what you're seeing over here. So you don't really need to set up a camera. You just kind of look at it from the angle that you want it to render at. So again, I'll go up here, go to render image, and we'll just hit render. When you do that, it'll process for a while, and when it's done processing, it'll download. And again, all of this is being done on their side, which is pretty cool. So, it's not really going to bog down your computer or anything like that. All right, so it's downloaded and we can take a look at it. There we go. There's our render. All right, that's it for this one. Check the links in the description for more info about Womp. And if you like this video and you want me to make more about Womp, let me know in the comments. I'd like to thank my patrons for their support, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a good one.